Hello and welcome to MTG Deck Tech, your source for the freshest Magic Arena decks. And today I'm going to discuss with you a deck that helped me yesterday to be the 6th place in the open ccmtg, so the Constructed Criticism Podcast open tournament. And yeah, I got 6th place out of 28 people with a record in the main phase of 3-2. I started on 2 and then I got 3 wins in a row. They were all pretty close, but the deck really got going. And yeah, I'm just gonna show you that. It's a Gruul Embercleave Deck. It is similar to the deck that Javier Dominguez played when he won the last Arena Mythic Championship. So we start with the Pelt Collector. So Pelt Collector is a 1 mana creature, which is the only 1 mana creature we're actually gonna play in this deck. As you can see, I'm not playing the Edgewall Innkeeper to do some kind of adventuring and gaining card draw with that. That's because I find it to be a bit too slow for this meta. We have a lot of cat decks running around, we have a lot of Fires of Invention decks running around, and so we really need to beat your opponent down fast. And Pelt Collector does just that. It gains a +1/+1 counter each time a bigger creature gets into the battlefield, and we have a lot of big creatures that can get into our battlefield. So you want to play Pelt Collector turn 1. If you can't find a Pelt Collector for turn 1, it's not the end of the world. You can definitely keep cards that only have like a Kraul Harpooner or Paradise Druid as your first spell. But if you have a Pelt Collector, that's a very nice thing for you. Kraul Harpooner is a card that can fight another creature with flying when it gets into the battlefield. So you can kill the Gilded Goose on turn 2. You can also kill big things because it has undergrowth. So if the game goes later, you have a lot of cards in your graveyard. It can get really big and kill, for example, Skarrgan Hellkite or something that your opponent might play, or another big flying creature, Cavalier, for example. So Kraul Harpooner is a nice card in some matchups. You can also sideboard it out if you don't need it. So if your opponent doesn't have flying creatures and you don't need the early 2-drop here, I'm definitely gonna sideboard that out. Paradise Druid is, I guess, a card that we have talked about a lot. It is a mana dog, so it makes you 1 mana if you tap it, and it also has hexproof as long as it's untapped. So you want to keep it untapped for as long as possible, but if you need it, it can give you mana. If you need it, it can give you damage. You can also attack with it, of course. And yeah, it also pumps your Pelt Collector if it gets down on turn 2. So that's a very nice thing. Kraul Harpooner is also free power, so it pumps your Pelt Collector even more. So you have a nice combo to get a big Pelt Collector, and if you get your Pelt Collector to 4/4, it also has Trample, which is very nice. Collision Colossus is again a card that you can sideboard out when your opponent doesn't have flying creatures and you don't need the Trample, but a Colossus can really be a very nice combat trick. You can just make your creature that's attacking so big and give it Trample, so it's perfect. Especially in combination with Questing Beast, because Questing Beast has Death Touch. It can allocate damage even better when it has Trample. So if it has Trample, it only needs to allocate 1 damage to the blocking creature and can get the rest of the damage into their face, which is a very nice thing that can totally win you some games. So this is definitely a card you will want to have in your hand for the exact right moment that you want to kill your opponent, or that you need the +2 to your toughness to survive a combat. So a very nice combat trick, can totally kill your opponent off, can totally wreck their game plan because they will not expect combat tricks. Well, maybe in this deck they will expect it, but mostly in Magic Standard you're not expecting combat tricks. Zhur-Taa Goblin is also a very nice creature, very fast creature, 2 mana for a 2/2 riot creature, so you can give it +1/+1, make it a 3/3, or you can give it haste. Most of the time I'm gonna give it haste, but if you need, for example, to have a 3/3 creature to pump your Pelt Collector, you can also give it the +1/+1. And also, of course, if your opponent has big creatures that you can't get through, of course you're gonna do the +1/+1. So you have some flexibility with this card. Same goes for Ghoul Spellbreaker that we're going to talk about later. Riot is just a nice addition to your flexibility with this deck. Bonecrusher Giant, yeah, I think it's a card that everyone has picked up on. It can do 2 damage with the Stomp ability, and you can also play it for a free creature that deals damage to your opponent when they target it with a spell. So it's a very nice card for this deck. I don't think I have to talk about it much. You can use it as a combat trick. You can use it to kill your opponent's Gilded Goose or to kill some other small creature of theirs. Or you can just hit their face and get off a light up the stage with spectacle cost. So you can use it in many different ways. Speaking of light up the stage, this is a card, of course, that will be your only card draw engine. So it's really nice if you have that in your opening hand. You can cast it for 3 mana, but you can also cast it for 1 mana if you did damage to your opponent this turn. So spectacle cost 1 mana for 2 cards that you can play the next turn is a very nice card to have. So this is nice to find your lands, your spells, everything. If you know you can do damage to your opponent and there is no reason that you would want to use your mana beforehand, and basically if you can afford not playing a land before casting light up the stage, you should almost always do it, because then you can find 2 lands, for example, and play them both. At some point it won't matter anymore if you have enough lands, but in the early game, when you don't have like a spell that you want to play and you need the mana for it, just keep your lands in your hand and try keeping that for the light up the stage lands that you will find. Gruul Spellbreaker, also Riot, also Trample, so you can use it flexibly to attack fast or to pump your Pelt Collector even higher. So many things you can do with the Gruul Spellbreaker. It also has hexproof during your turn, and it gives you hexproof during your turn, so your opponent will not be able to remove it with a Murderous Rider, for example, when it's your turn, and you can basically always get an attack in. Questing Beast is a very nice card. We have talked about it in other videos with other decks. Questing Beast is just so much stuff that can do. Vigilant, Death Touch, Haste. It cannot be blocked by small creatures. It can deal the damage that it does to your opponent also to one of their planeswalkers. So yeah, that's just very nice all around. And yes, nothing more to say about it. I think we've talked about it a lot in our other videos. For example, in the Zhur-Taa Food deck, I think I talked about it. So if you want to watch it again, you can do that. Questing Beast is just a very nice card that has some evasion, that has haste, that has vigilance as well. So you can also always keep it as a blocker. It's just all around very nice. And it combines very well with your trample effect, because it will only allocate 1 damage to the blocker and the rest to the opponent's face. Skarrgan Hellkite is a very nice deep end for your deck. It also has Riot, but you will have to do the +1/+1 counter if you want to use it as a removal spell, because it can do 2 damage for 4 mana, divided as you choose. So it can kill 2 1-toughness creatures or 1 2-toughness creature or some planeswalkers, or it can hit the face. And you can also give it haste, of course, but then you won't be able to use this ability. So Skarrgan Hellkite is a very nice deep end of this deck that can also be fast, but can also give you some threat in the long game. Embercleave is the card that this deck is named after. It's your finishing spell. You will always want to have that in your back pocket if you want to win the game quickly. So this spell can be flashed in, so you can play it during combat and equip it to a creature that is attacking. And yeah, you can also reduce its cost pretty much. Whenever one of your creatures attacks, it reduces the mana cost of 1. So if you have 4 creatures attacking, it's only 2 mana, and you get +1/+1 on your creature, and it also gains double strike. So it's very nice. You can always play it out when on a creature that you don't need it on, to let it be better in combat. So for example, if you have a Paradise Druid and a Kraul Harpooner attacking, and you really need to have the Paradise Druid survive, you can push the Paradise Druid for this turn and get the Embercleave on the Kraul Harpooner the next turn. So you'll also always have to weigh if you want to do more damage now or if you want more creatures alive. That will depend on what situation you have. As you only have 3 mana for equipping it to the other creatures, you don't lose that much if you try to use it as a combat trick. With the mana base, we don't have much to say. It's Stomping Grounds, of course, because it's the only untapped dual land in this format. You have forests and you also have mountains. Yeah, nothing more to say about that. It's just a normal mana base for Gruul. In your sideboard, I have Redcap Melee because it can deal 4 damage to creatures or planeswalkers. And yeah, if a non-red permanent is dealt damage this way, you have to sacrifice a land. So you want to sideboard that in against red decks that most likely have 4 toughness creatures or 4 loyalty planeswalkers that you want to get rid of. Embercliff Shieldbreaker, it's here in this deck, especially for the cat matchup. You can destroy an artifact with its adventure half. And yeah, destroy the Witch's Oven. That's what it's for. Most other decks don't play artifacts, and even if they play it, it's not worth playing the Shield Breaker. So this is only really an anti-cat card. Lava Coil is 4 damage to a creature, and it also exiles this creature. So if you have, for example, the cat deck, you can exile the cat. Always watch out if their Witch's Oven is tapped. If it's untapped, they can just sacrifice it in response, so you don't want to do that. But you can also get rid of stuff like the Mayhem Devil, or for example, if your opponent plays a Questing Beast, you can also get rid of that. So it's a very nice spell to have as a removal. Robber of the Rich, I have to have some options against decks that have a lot of cards in hand. So control decks mainly. When it attacks, it can steal one of your opponent's cards from their library, and you can cast this whenever a rogue you have attacks. I think that's the only rogue you really have. I'm not sure about it. Yeah, it's not the greatest card, but in some matchups it can really hurt your opponent. It also has reach and haste, so if your opponent has some flying creatures, that could also be worth. And you most likely want to sideboard that in whenever you are on the play, because on the draw your opponent will most likely not have a card advantage over you, so you want to keep the robber out there. Cindervines is another card we use against, for example, the cat decks, because it can destroy an artifact or an enchantment for 1. You can also use that against, for example, Esper Stacks, Esper Dance, whatever you want to call it, to destroy Doom Foretold or stuff like that. So it's very nice. And it also, if you don't use it, it deals 1 damage to your opponent whenever they cast a non-creature spell. So if your opponent has some kind of spell-heavy deck, you can also think about bringing that in. Domri's Ambush is a very nice card to have as a removal, especially against planeswalkers, because your creature deals direct damage to the planeswalker. So it's not a fighting ability. Your opponent's creature can't fight back. And yeah, you can use that for as long as you want with the removal, and you also give your creature +1/+1, so it's very nice in combination, for example, with the Questing Beast. You can use Domri's Ambush, give it 5/5, and for example get rid of the Lovestruck Beast, for example, if your opponent plays that. Otherwise you won't be able to get rid of Lovestruck Beast, so if your opponent plays, for example, the Golgari Adventures or stuff like that, you will always want to bring in Domri's Ambush. Sorcerer Spyglass is the card against Planeswalkers. It's also very nice against the cat deck, because you can just name Witch's Oven and then your opponent basically can't do anything anymore unless they get rid of the Spyglass. It also gives you some overview over your opponent's hands, although I would only play this card really when I know what my opponent is trying to do, and when I know that they have a powerful planeswalker, for example the Nissa, or if they have the Witch's Oven, then I would bring that card in. Legion Warboss is a card that makes you a +1 or a 1/1 creature every turn. So if you need to go wide for some reason, you'll always want to bring in the Legion Warboss. It's not many games where you want to do it, but if your opponent, for example, has a lot of very big creatures, or I guess a small amount of very big creatures, you can go wide and can get past them. Thrashing Brontodon is also a card that we use against Esper Dance and the cat deck. It can destroy artifacts or enchantments if you sacrifice it. It's also a very nice card. Just 3 mana cost for 3/4 is not that bad. Next up we have Cosmotronic Wave. Cosmotronic Wave deals 1 damage to each creature your opponent controls, and your opponent's creatures can't block for 1 turn. So you use this card either to get a lot of 1/1 creatures out of the battlefield, for example, in some adventure decks or in Mono Red Cavalcade. You could totally nuke their board with the Cosmotronic Wave. Also, having your opponent not be able to block stuff can be very nice against big creatures that just are in your way and you need to get through them for some big damage. You can use that spell as a game finishing spell. Shifting Ceratops, last but not least, is your hate card against everything counter, so against Azorius, or against the Simic Flash, or against the Izzet spell, Izzet Flash deck. You can use that because it can't be countered. It also has protection from blue, so it can't be bounced by Teferi or something like that. And you can also give it your choice of reach, trample, or haste for 1 green mana. And with 4 mana as a 5/4, it's a very nice card. You don't really lose anything playing that. And it can really help you against some kind of blue deck. Then you most likely want to sideboard out the Skarrgan, for example, or the Gruul Spellbreaker, and sideboard in all of your Ceratops. So I hope you enjoyed this look at my deck where I finished 6th in the last tournament with. I hope you try it out. I hope you like it. I hope you gain some ranks with it. And yeah, if you like this video, give it a like. It really helps me. It was very nice of you to have this grade of feedback the last 2 videos. And yeah, so if you want to see this again, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter, get into contact with me. I'm always happy to hear from you. And until then, this was MTG Deck Tech.